The giant peach was being eaten by ravenous sharks in the middle of the ocean. And next on the menu was James, Miss Spider, the ladybird, the centipede, the earthworm, and the old green grasshopper, who were standing on top of the peach. "Is there nothing we can do?" asked the ladybird, appealing to James. "Surely you can think of a way out of this." "There is something that I believe we might try," James said, "but we'd need hundreds of yards of string to make it work." "What sort of string?" asked the old green grasshopper sharply. "Well, any sort, just so long as it's strong." "But, my dear boy, that's exactly what we have got." "How? Where?" "The silkworm," cried the old green grasshopper. "He's still downstairs in the peach. He just lies there sleeping all day long, but we can easily wake him up and make him spin all the string you want."
"And what about me, may I ask?" said Miss Spider. "I can spin too. I'll help the silkworm. But what are you going to do?"
"I'm going to lift this peach clear out of the water," James announced firmly. "You're mad!" cried the earthworm.
"Go on, James," the ladybird said. "How are you going to do it?"
"Seagulls," James answered calmly. "The place is full of them. Look up there." They all looked up and saw a great mass of seagulls wheeling round in the sky. "I'm going to make a long silk stream," James went on, "and I'm going to loop one end of it round a seagull's neck, and then I'm going to tie the other end to the stem of the peach." He pointed to the peach stem, which was standing up like a short, thick mast in the middle of the deck. "Then I'm going to get another seagull with another loop and do the same thing again, then another, and then another, until the seagulls can lift the peach out of danger."
"The boy is dotty,"
said the centipede.
"Let him finish," said the ladybird. "Go on, James. How do you do it?"
"With bait."
"Bait? What sort of bait?"
"With a worm, of course. Seagulls love worms, didn't you know? And luckily for us, we have here the biggest, fattest, pinkest, juiciest earthworm in the world." "You can stop right there," the earthworm said sharply. "That's quite enough." "Go on," the others said, beginning to grow interested. "Go on." "The seagulls have already spotted him," James continued, "but they daren't come down to get him while all the rest of us are here. So this is what the plan is." "I don't give a hoot what the plan is," cried the earthworm. "I'm not going to be picked to pieces by a bunch of seagulls." The centipede looked at the earthworm.
"You will be a martyr," he said. "I shall respect you for the rest of my life." "So will I," said Miss Spider. "And your name will be in all the newspapers. Earthworm gives life to save friends."
"But he won't have to give his life." James put an arm gently round the earthworm. "I won't let them touch you," he said. "I promise I won't. But we've got to hurry. There's not a moment to lose." In a few minutes, everything was made ready. It was very quiet now on top of the peach. There was nobody in sight, nobody except the earthworm. One half of the earthworm, looking like a great, thick, juicy pink sausage, lay innocently in the sun for all the seagulls to see. The other half of him was dangling down the tunnel. James was crouching just below the surface, waiting for the first seagull. He had a loop of silk string in his hands. The old green grasshopper and the ladybird were further down the tunnel, holding on to the earthworm's tail, ready to pull him out of danger as soon as James gave the word. "Here comes the first seagull," he whispered. "Keep still now, earthworm. The rest of you, get ready to pull." Out of the corner of one eye, James watched the seagull as it came swooping down towards the earthworm, and then suddenly, it was so close he could see its small black eyes and its curved beak. "Pull!" shouted James. The old green grasshopper and the ladybird gave the earthworm's tail an enormous tug, and like magic, the earthworm disappeared into the tunnel. At the same time, up went James's hand, and the seagull flew right into the loop of silk thread he was holding out. The loop, which had been cleverly made, tightened just the right amount, but not too much, round its neck, and the seagull was captured. "Hooray!" shouted the old green grasshopper, peering out of the tunnel. "Well done, James." Up flew the seagull, with James paying out the silk string as it went. He gave about 50 yards and then tied the string to the stem of the peach. "Next one," he shouted, jumping back into the tunnel. "Up you get again, earthworm. Bring up more silk, centipede."
"I don't like this at all," wailed the earthworm. "It only just missed me."
"Shh," whispered James. "Keep still. Here comes another one." So they did it again and again and again, and the seagulls kept coming, and James caught them one by one and tethered them to the peach stem. 100 seagulls," he shouted, wiping the sweat from his face. "Keep going," they cried. "Keep going, James." 200 seagulls, 300 seagulls, 400 seagulls. The sharks, as though sensing that they were in danger of losing their prey, were hurling themselves at the peach more furiously than ever. 500 seagulls, James shouted. "We're lifting," someone else shouted. "No, we're not." "Yes, I felt it." "Put on another seagull, quick." "Quiet, everybody. Here's one coming now." This was seagull number 501. James tethered it to the stem with all the others. Then the 502nd seagull was caught and harnessed to the peach stem, and then, suddenly but slowly, majestically, like some fabulous golden balloon with all the seagulls straining at the strings above, the giant peach rose up out of the water and began climbing towards the heavens. In a flash, everybody was up on top. "Oh, isn't it beautiful?" they cried. "What a marvelous feeling! Goodbye, sharks! Oh, boy, this is the way to travel." Up and up they went, and soon they were as high as the top of the church steeple above the ocean. "I'm a bit worried about the peach," James said to the others. "I wonder how much damage those sharks have done to it underneath. It's quite impossible to tell from up here."
"Why don't I go over the side and make an inspection?"
Miss Spider said.
"It's no trouble at all, I assure you."
Without waiting for an answer, she quickly produced a length of silk thread and attached the end of it to the peach stem.
"I'll be back in a jiffy,"
she said, and then she walked calmly over to the edge of the peach and jumped off, paying the thread behind her as she fell. The others crowded anxiously round the place where she'd gone over.
"Wouldn't it be dreadful if the thread broke?"
the ladybird said. There was rather a long silence.
"Are you all right, Miss Spider?"
shouted the old green grasshopper.
"Yes, thank you,"
her voice answered from below.
"I'm coming up now."
And up she came, climbing foot over foot up the silk thread, and at the same time tucking the thread back cleverly into her body as she climbed past it. "Is it awful?" they asked her. "Is it all eaten away? Are there great holes in it everywhere?" Miss Spider clambered back onto the deck with a pleased but also rather puzzled look on her face.
"You won't believe this," she said, "but actually there's hardly any damage down there at all. The peach is almost untouched. There are just a few tiny pieces out of it here and there, but nothing more."
"You must be mistaken," James told her.
"Why did we start sinking?"
the centipede asked.
"Well, perhaps we didn't start sinking," the old green grasshopper suggested. "Perhaps we were all so frightened that we simply imagined it."
This, in point of fact, was closer to the truth than any of them knew. A shark, you see, has an extremely long, sharp nose, and its mouth is set very awkwardly underneath its face and a long way back. This makes it more or less impossible for it to get its teeth into any vast, smooth, curving surface, such as the side of a peach. Even if the creature turns on its back, it still can't do it, because the nose always gets in the way. If you've ever seen a small dog trying to get its teeth into an enormous ball, you'll be able to imagine roughly what it was like with the sharks and the peach.
"It must have been some kind of magic,"
the ladybird said.
"The holes must have healed up by themselves."
"Oh, look, there's a ship below us," shouted James. Everybody rushed to the side and peered over. None of them had ever seen a ship before. "It looks like a big one. It's got 3 funnels." Neither James nor any of the others knew it, but the ship that was now passing underneath them was actually the Queen Mary, sailing out of the English Channel on her way to America. And on the bridge of the Queen Mary, the astonished captain was standing with a group of his officers, all of them gaping at the great round ball hovering overhead.
"I don't like it," the captain said. "Give me my telescope."
The first officer handed the telescope to the captain. The captain put it to his eye.
"There's birds everywhere." he cried. The whole sky is teeming with birds. What in the world are they doing? Wait a second. There are people on it. I can see them moving. Do I have this darn thing focused right? It looks like a little boy in short trousers standing up there. And there's a sort of giant ladybird. Now, just a minute, Captain, the first officer said. And a mammoth spider. Captain, the first officer said sharply. Captain, please. And a colossal green grasshopper. Oh, dear. He's been at the whiskey again, whispered the second officer. And a simply enormous centipede, screamed the captain. Call the ship's doctor, the first officer said. Our captain is not well. A moment later, the great round ball disappeared into a cloud, and the people on the ship never saw it again. Up on the beach itself, everyone was still happy and excited. I wonder where we'll finish up, the earthworm said. Who cares, they answered. Seagulls always go back to land, sooner or later. Up and up they went, high above the highest clouds, the beach swaying gently from side to side as it floated along. Are we still going up? Asked James.
We certainly are, answered the old green grasshopper, and it's beginning to get dark.
James and his companions crouched close together on top of the beach as the night began closing in round them. Clouds like mountains towered high above their heads on all sides, mysterious, menacing, overwhelming. And several times during that long, silent night ride, high up over the middle of the ocean in the moonlight, James and his friends saw things that no one had ever seen before. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what they saw, and you will be, as they were, amazed. Until then, goodbye.